Okay, so now what I wanted to talk about really quick is I also wanted to say that the Q&A, definitely use that. We're going to try to leave time for questions. We'll see where we get, but definitely ask your questions to any or all of our panelists on here, and feel free to use that question box, and then hopefully we'll be able to answer those for you at the end as well. So now, I'm really excited to introduce all of our panelists. But as I introduce each of you, do you mind if you just share just a quick, overview of what type of travel you specialize in, and just a little bit more about your business? So, Ted, I'm going to start with you because you're first on my row here. So, Ted Blank, who's owner at Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventure, welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I am based in Hudson, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of the Twin Cities. And I primarily, my team and I, we primarily sell cruises, luxury cruises, river cruises, and then also customized European vacations. And when it comes to groups, I focus on river cruise groups, luxury cruise groups, and Alaska cruise groups.
Awesome. That's really cool. And next up, we have Joy Crutchfield, who is founder and CEO of The Joy of Travel. So thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a real pleasure just getting to know you and the other panelists.
Yeah.
I'm in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Our focus is mainly on personally escorted groups. We tend to really enjoy traveling with our customers. So while we are a full service agency, we do a lot of groups in which we are participants in the group experience.
Perfect. So cool. And that's why I wanted you both to introduce, because the different group travel, there's so many different group travels you can do, which I know Kathy will touch on that. I mean, it is crazy how many different angles you can go. But with that being said too, Kathy Estes, who, if you know, actually used to be at Travify, but now is a group sales manager at Napa Valley Wine Train, but is no stranger to group travel. So can you share a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. It's fun to be back. Miss everybody at Travify. Don't miss the weather as we go into winter. But yeah, I recently relocated out to California to be near family, and I'm now with the Napa Valley Wine Train. So I'm doing all of the national group sales. So that could be anywhere from 20 people in a group up to chartering the train if you have 300 people. My previous experience has been host agency, owner, doing cruises, all inclusive, things like that. I also have a hotel procurement background. So have done things on the hotel side, on the corporate side. So a lot of contracts, procurement.
Cool. And one thing too, one random thing, Kathy, it kind of comes out. So if you can move when you talk, I think that might help, but we'll see. We'll see if it comes in. But otherwise, it should be good though, because I know technology. That's what we've been saying. Everything is great, but technology is terrifying. So hopefully everything will go good here. But what I want to do though, really quick. So I wanted to give you a quick background on the panelists before we dive in. And now what my plan is for this is that I first want to hand it off to Kathy, who's going to spend just like 10 minutes, super high level overview of the supplier side when working with advisors. That's why we wanted to bring in a supplier, also because there's so much to that. And we'll get into that here during the discussion as well. But if you're already familiar with planning group travel, this might sound a little repetitive to you, but if you're not, or you're looking to get into it, I think this is really good information just to have a high level knowing of basic lingo, things that the process of working with a supplier as well with group trips. And then after that, we're going to move into the panel discussion where I'll ask different questions, touching on many different topics with our panel. So it'll be cool. I'm really excited for this. And like I said, there's a lot to cover. So I'm going to just let Kathy dive in here. And I have the slides on my end. So Kathy, feel free, tell me when I should also, if I need to click to the next slide, let me know also, but I'll try to stick with you. But okay.
Well, sounds great. Okay. And you can hear me okay? Was my sound kind of weird earlier or?
Yeah, it kind of just like would fade in and out, but it sounds okay now. I'll let you know if that changes though.
Great. I'll just try not to move my head or
Yeah.
just move my lips. But yeah, so when you're looking to do group travel, other than finding the group, which the other panelists can speak about the marketing and finding groups and working with groups, one of the most important things is speaking on behalf of your group. And you would start that with the process with an RFP, request for proposal. That might be something that you do with a resort, a hotel, a cruise line, a venue, any supplier that you're going to bring a group. It's just a way to present all the information in one spot, as many details as you can, to get the ball rolling, to see if it's going to be a good fit for you. There's a lot of different type of groups you can do this for, as you can see here. And again, the panel can speak to a lot of these different types of groups. But groups are actually very lucrative and they can be very fun to work with. And I think one of the biggest fears is, if I get a group of 100 people, how am I going to manage 100 people? How am I going to talk to 100 people? You're not necessarily talking to 100 people. More often than not, there's a planner or there's a host, and you're probably going to do most of your talking with that person, not all of the travelers themselves. And so just because you have a group doesn't mean it's going to be 100 times the work with 100 people. You may still only be. So don't be afraid to try groups out. Next slide.
Yes. Oh, yes. There we go.
So a few things to know is we touched on RFP, request for proposal. There's several ways you can submit those. Most of the time when you go to a website for a supplier, they're going to have a link that you can click and use their RFP. You can also use one from a third party such as Cvent. There's free RFPs through Cvent and other sources, but there's also paid depending on the level that you need to use them for. When you're submitting an RFP, I really encourage everyone to do your due diligence and do a little bit more of your own research. It's surprising how many times we'll see RFPs come through, and a lot of the questions and information, it doesn't even match what we have. So if you're looking for a property that has a spa, don't send an RFP to all these properties that don't have a spa and ask in the RFP, do you have a spa? Because it's kind of taking up your time, it's taking up the supplier and the vendor's time. And you really want to start reaching out to people and do some due diligence research to those that are going to best match your client. The other thing is concession. Concessions are things that you request during the process that you're asking for in addition to what the property or the cruise line or the resorts would offer. And the more valuable that the proposal that you're sending or the RFP you're sending, the more revenue that place looks at, the more concessions you might be able to get. Another thing I recommend is don't copy and paste a standard concession. Like if there's 20 that you ask for, you always copy and paste that, because a lot of them won't match. And I'll use parking as an example. A lot of places or planners will reach out and say, we need free parking. So if that hotel charges $25 a night for parking, and you have a group of 50 people coming for 3 days, so that's equal to 150 parking spaces, right? 3 nights total. There's a value to that, which means as they're putting together that proposal, they're going to pull that revenue that they're giving you for free somewhere else. They may increase the food and beverage minimum you have to have. It may increase your room rate. They may not offer you some concessions that you actually could use or need because you've asked for free parking. When in fact, maybe you didn't need free parking for all 50 attendees. Maybe you just needed parking for your 5 leadership who are local because everyone else is flying in and going to take an Uber. So try to be detailed and ask for what you really need and what's really going to benefit your client. When you do that, it really helps us on our end focus and to give you the best offer possible based on what you're actually asking for. And you would be surprised how often we receive in the hotel industry or in most industries on the side, just a standard concession sheet that has 10, 15, 20 concessions. They just copy and paste, copy and paste. So then you're putting it on us to decide what's most important to give you rather than what you really, really should get. The last thing is going to be attrition or performance. That means when you contract something, you are responsible for a percentage of the business you're contracting. So for example, if you contract 100 rooms and the performance is 90%, that means that you are responsible for paying for 90 of those rooms, regardless if you use them or not. So really try to be conscious of what you're contracting and asking for, because you are going to be responsible, or your client's going to be responsible. Standard attrition usually is around 80-20 for really high-end markets, or really popular dates or sold out dates or holidays, depending on the market. It might be 10%. If you're going in off season somewhere and it's really low season and it's need days, maybe you can get 70-30. So these are some of the things that you should be doing when you submit an RFP for a group. Do your research on the property and the destination. Try to submit things in detail. Reduce the number of questions you have. Don't send 25 generic questions of things that are probably available on the website, or that you probably should already know before you send the RFP. Really think about the concessions that will benefit your client, and then really think about what you're reserving and what you're willing to contract, because you may be responsible for some of that inventory and paying for it, even if you don't.
Cool. And real quick, can you, because it kind of is cut, it's not terrible, but can you try moving like the little white thing up, or like the microphone, like when you talk, like do this?
Sure.
I don't know if that will help, but we
Is
can
the
try.
microphone, is that better?
I think it might. Let's try
Better?
it. Yeah. I literally just see people do this on TikTok, so I think it helps. So
I don't
we'll
have
give it a try.
TikTok, but I will take your word for it.
I think it sounds crisp and clear. Love it. Okay.
I apologize.
No worries.
Hopefully that all came across.
Oh, and there was one question that just the RFP, because it kind of what does RFP stand for again?
RFP stands for Request for Proposal. So again, you can do that several ways. Websites for each vendor usually has an RFP button or a groups button where you can fill out their form. Again, try to be detailed. Or if it's something you're going to be doing often, especially in the hotel industry or resorts, you might consider signing up for a Cvent account or another proposal software program, to where you can have your own template and then use that over and over. But you're going to get a much quicker response if you do that, rather than just leaving a voicemail or sending an email, if you're actually putting it together.
Perfect. And final thing too, because I know when we were talking stuff, that something that you mentioned when working with suppliers is just being honest about what you need and upfront. So can you touch on that really quick?
Yeah, I mean, if there are deal breakers already up front, in fact, I mean, I received one recently where they had an addendum, and an addendum is very common, especially in certain markets like healthcare or the seed or agriculture industry. There are just certain things that have to be in their contracts. And some hotels or franchises or hotel chains are going to be more lenient with language and contracts, and some aren't. So if there are deal breakers right away that that you have to have certain language in a contract, or there's certain things that your client, they're must-haves, or they will not consider the property, just be upfront with that, because it's going to save you time, it's going to save them time, and it's really going to narrow the field of the properties that can meet your needs.
Perfect. Yeah. And I know, and especially if there's new people on here, they're like, what is all of this stuff? So that's what we're going to get into. So I know it might be overwhelming when you first hear like the thing, because there's just so many things to it. So I really hope so. Thank you so much, Kathy, for just kind of laying the groundwork for all of that. There's so much to it. So it's really cool to have the supplier perspective on here. But now what I want to do though, is I want to dive into all types of thing group travel. So feel free. So again, our whole panel will join in, but for our panel, feel free to interject if there's anything you want to add or think of as these questions come in. So, okay. So the first one here though, I want to start off pretty simple here is, why group travel? So like, what is it that makes group travel so special and unique for travel agents? But also a little caveat to that is, why also could it maybe not be the best option? Like, what should you be asking yourself to see? Is this right for me? And Joy, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I was afraid of that.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, and I have the perfect answer. It's not right for you if you don't like to deal with details. Everything Kathy just said was all about details, knowing details, being able to articulate what you need. If details make you crazy, group travel is not for you. In my particular position, we travel with our customers on our personally escorted groups. And I've had so many travel agents tell me that they do not want to travel with their clients. Then don't. If you're not going to enjoy it, don't do it. It's groups are extremely lucrative, but they're also a tremendous amount of work, and you're either cut out for it or you aren't. And if you try to do it and you find that it isn't enjoyable, there might be better avenues for you.
Perfect. Yeah. See, that's the thing. When I was talking to you, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of details, which it does make sense when you start breaking it down. So there is a lot to that. And Ted, how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything that Joy said. I mean, if you have no interest in spending a week with your clients and being in, kind of an intimate travel setting with them, then personally hosted groups are not for you. I think another thing is that groups require a lot of planning, they require a lot of lead time, and they require a lot of promotion. And so for some people that takes them away from other things, and they just don't have the bandwidth to do it. But Joy alluded to groups being very lucrative, and groups, I would say, can be extremely lucrative, and particularly if you can build groups that generate, that magical TC bonus, and that's the tour conductor bonus. That's kind of that old-fashioned term for the free berth that they used to give to bus drivers. Basically, the free bed for bus drivers. And in many cases now with group travel, that can be paid to your agency as a bonus commission. And that can be the equivalent of 2 or 3 additional staterooms or additional rooms at a resort that you sold with no effort and no work. So groups are very lucrative. They have a great transfer over effect onto your individual travel business as well. Folks who travel with a group that you host or a group that you create very, very often will come back and book their own personal travel with you as well, because they've come to know you, they've come to like you, and they've come to trust you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. And I was going to ask you, like, what are the perks but lucrative? I mean, that is where everybody wants, getting into groups, because it is very lucrative, but it's also a really cool way to build up clientele and all that good stuff. So, yeah, but lots of moving pieces, logistics, and so much more there. But that's why I also want to get in right at the beginning here too, is just working with suppliers, because that is huge. And like how we have Kathy, we brought her in for this because, it's cool because you get to build these relationships with suppliers. So I really want to talk about that. So what should you look for when comparing like suppliers? And Ted, I'll start with you on this one too.
Well, so the good news is, if you're talking about cruises, if you're talking about guided vacations, if you're talking about, beach vacations, there are great, suppliers who can help to either provide the travel experience, or they can help to broker the agreement. If you're going to work with the resort in Mexico, you don't need to work with the resort directly. You could work through a wholesaler, and they can help with all those nuances of an RFP. But I think you really want to look for partners who are committed to the long term, who are flexible, and will grow with your business. There are some great group programs out there in the travel industry, but you're starting at maybe 80 people to take advantage of them. Well, most people aren't going to generate a group of 80 people right out of the gate. So look for somebody who's going to grow with you, has some flexibility, and makes it worth your time to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. And Joy, how about for you?
Again, I agree with everything he just said. As well as for me, the role of my business development manager is critical. I just don't want to do groups with a company that does not give me a reliable business development manager that I can go to with issues, that I can go to with problems. We've been doing groups for about 18 years. And if you're going to do groups, you're going to have problems. Things are going to come up. And I think the others would agree with me that were unforeseen, unexpected, and highly problematic. And you've got to have a business development manager that's going to have your back. It's going to go to the company and help you resolve these issues. I also try to take a really good look. COVID to me was a blessing in a lot of ways. And one of the ways was I was able to look at some of the companies we did business with and really examine how they managed COVID. How did they treat their customers? How did they treat us? Were these people that we felt like dealt with people in a way that exhibited a lot of integrity? And those are the people you want to go forward with, these people that have your best interest and your customer's best interest at heart.
And I'll just add on the BDM point, great proactive BDMs who can come to you and say, hey, have you thought about building a group around this particular, destination or this particular trip, because they know it will work for you, not because it happens to be at the top of their, distressed inventory list for the year. It's really important to have those relationships so that you can have that conversation. And I have gotten some great ideas that I never, ever would have thought about until it was too late from some of the really good BDMs we have.
Yeah.
I agree with both of those. In fact, I have followed my salespeople to other places because they provided the service, they provided everything that I love. And so when they left a hotel or they left a resort or they left a cruise line and went somewhere else, I actually took my business wherever they went because I already knew that's half the battle right there. It's not just the product you're selling, but the support and the service that you're going to get for your group for that product.
That's
I've done
really
the same thing, Kathy. You just brought back a really pleasant memory. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it is. And this, I didn't have this one in there, but I know like for new agents, how do you find those suppliers? Like, how have you all found your suppliers? Is it going to conferences? Is it just, researching? Is there any specific way that's helped you?
I'd say all of the above. I mean, you meet people at conferences, you may meet them through your agency or your host agency. You may find them because it's a destination or a product that you think is really cool, and you just pick up the phone and reach out. I mean, I think it's all of the above, and you just have to do it, and you have to spend a little time doing it so that you can kind of separate the people who are just salespeople and the people who are looking to build a good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I very much have appreciated the business development managers that have come to me because I started our agency in a town that had 2 traffic lights. So if they took the trouble to find me, come to me and talk to me about their brand, they wanted my business. And it meant a lot to me that they did that. And now as we've moved into the bigger areas and grown, I'm still doing business with a lot of those same people because they were the ones that cared enough to come to me in the first place.
Love that. That's really cool. Good community, the travel community. And how about also another thing though, is when picking a new supplier, what are reasonable, so Joy, you had brought this up actually when we were talking is, reasonable commission and terms and conditions. So how do you approach that? Is that one of the main things you would be asking a supplier, or what are those top questions that should be at the top of your list when you are researching a new supplier? And Joy, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. Commissions, the difference between a 7% commission and an 18% commission is astronomical. And if I'm going to be delivering group business, if I'm going to be delivering any business, I'm not doing it for 7%, and I'm not doing it for 10%, and I'm not doing it for 13%. It's negotiable. And when you first start, truly you have to start at the bottom, but as you begin to deliver for these brands, they need to compensate you fairly for your ability to deliver business. So that is something that you need to come to the table every year and negotiate. The tour conductor credits that we mentioned earlier are critical. Some companies are much more generous with those than others, but back to Kathy's point, sometimes the more generous they are with tour conductors, the higher the price point to cover that added tour conductor. So that's a little caveat in there that you sort of have to watch for. But the commission is important. The tour conductors are important. The ease of use. If I have to call someone to book every person into my group, that's a no-go for me. I need to be able to I've got to do it online. Their technology has to be up to date in a way that utilizes the best use of my time. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, Kathy, I was going to ask you, what should they be asking you as a supplier?
Oh gosh, that's like giving away my secrets. No, actually, when you're thinking of concessions, you can also be thinking of the concessions for you and your agency as well. They're not just on behalf of the client. So parking might be for the client, but maybe you ask for meeting planner points, which all of the large hotels and most of the large vendors have some type of a reward system. Don't be afraid to ask for matching points for you and your client. Ask if they have any meeting planner or any specials going on. Sometimes they're offering triple points to book certain dates. Ask for specific commission. If you're dealing with somebody and you're saying you want 10% and you know they usually pay 7%, ask what additional concession they might offer you as the planner for that additional 3%. Sometimes they're creative in the things that they'll offer you that might have a high value for you as the agent or the planner, but isn't really costing them a lot of money. So just be creative in the things that you ask for, and also do research and see if the cruise line, the hotel, the resort, do they have something going on right now? Because you may not be told that when you're sourcing them. So if you come in saying, hey, I know that you're having something for all bookings or receiving this thing being booked by the end of the month, make sure you're getting that, because it may not be shared with you unless you ask for it. So again, do a little research with who you want to do business.
And don't be afraid to compare different suppliers. If you're looking at cruise lines, they all have slightly different policies, right? And some of them will be very, very flexible and say, you know what, we'll guarantee that you get either a TC or we'll guarantee an agent rate on this particular departure so that you can go with your group, even if it's only 4 people. And that's a good concession to consider asking for. And I think sometimes, you very quickly learn which companies are just big group machines and you just check the boxes and that's all there is, unless you're taking the entire resort or chartering the entire ship. But a lot of companies, as Kathy said, can be flexible, and knowing the questions to ask, but also having a person who you can talk to and have that frank discussion is really helpful in building the business.
Perfect. Yeah, love that. We had to start with the suppliers. It's the main thing that helps you get your trip going. So the other thing, though, that I want to talk about is marketing. How do you, because I know that's the other big thing is, especially when agents are trying to break into group travel is, okay, how do I get started? How do I market this? So I really want to talk about all the different ways that you can do this, whether you're working directly with a group of people, like a church group, a book club, or if you're just marketing yourselves and you're just, you're saying, hey, I'm going here, this date, who wants to come? So I think a fun one to start with would be Joy. I want to start with you on that, because I know you do a lot of, I can see in your email signature, you have, here are the upcoming dates. So you're marketing that way, but how else do you market? How did you start marketing your group trips?
We started, believe it or not, social media wasn't a huge thing back in the dark ages. And so we started by newspaper ads. I mean, I go back that far. These days, it is all social media. We do have an extensive database, and we reach out to our database first when we're announcing a new personally escorted group. And so they sort of have first right of refusal. But after a given amount of time, it goes to social media and is made available to all of our followers on Facebook and the other social media outlets. I'm old, I just stick with Facebook. My other agents, they do I don't even know what they are, in all honesty. They do the others, but that's generally speaking how we do it. It's for us, we do private personally escorted groups more than anything else. And so it's more about, come go with me, let me tell you what we're going to experience, as opposed to having someone come to you, a pastor, for instance, that wants to do a Holy Land, and it's sort of a ready-made group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know we talked about that before too, is finding those new clients. So how do you start to find those clients in market?
Yeah, I mean, I think Joy has some great ideas. I think what I have found, my personal experience, is that in the luxury space, social media is not where it's at. That's just not a demographic for that. I've actually found that probably one of the best things you can do is ask your clients. Ask your clients, hey, are you part of any kind of a group that might be interested in traveling together? That's how I got my first river cruise group, was by asking, and it turned out they were part of a church choir, and boom, we had a group. I think you also, wherever you go and whatever you do in life, whether you're part of a church, whether you're part of a civic organization like a Rotary Club, Whether you're part of, as you said, a book club or a knitting club or a pickleball club, those are all great affinities that maybe you can find a group that has a good group Pied Piper, somebody who could help you fill the group, or maybe that's a good place to slot yourself in and say, hey, we're all part of this organization, come along with me and let's do something that's, somehow connected to it. But I have really found that clients and referrals from clients are a great question that a lot of us just overlook because, we're so busy booking that trip for folks, we forget to say, hey, let's just have a conversation and let me learn a little bit more about you. And people provide that information pretty readily, and that can be a good source of a group lead for you as well.
Mhm. I love that. That's so cool. I mean, it is so true that it's something that you just don't ask, like, wait, I want to learn more about you to personally build a relationship, but also, like we can find something really fun and unique that is made for you and your group. It's really cool. And another thing too that I want to talk about too is I know suppliers can really help with marketing also just by providing content and helping you craft something. So Kathy, I want to ask you, what are ways that suppliers can help when it comes to marketing? Like, is there anything you can help with or they can ask for?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're doing things that are more social. So cruise lines, resorts, they have an abundance of marketing. They have marketing plans. They have marketing packages. Sometimes they even have things they'll provide you if you want to go to a trade show, that they'll send you actual supplies to take to the trade show. All of them are different. Hotels as well. So don't be afraid to ask, especially if you're putting together an affinity group. And to explain what an affinity group is, it's basically a group of people who have a common interest that you put together for traveling. So instead of just a book club, so 20 people in the one book club, maybe you're going to have a group you put together and it's going to be touring libraries in London or something. So 20 separate people who don't know each other but love to read join your group. And so that's what an affinity group is. Very popular to put those together. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask for marketing. See, even prizes. A lot of them will give you prizes if you attend a trade show or something so that you have a giveaway as well.
That's a good point too.
And Joy mentioned, business development managers, and they can be helpful if you want to host some kind of an event to promote the group. They could perhaps come and give the presentation. I always caution that don't let them do the whole presentation. You need to do part of it yourself as well. But they oftentimes have co-op funds as well that can be helpful to, offset some of the costs of promoting an event like that or hosting an event like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that. So another one here too, and hopefully I know there's so many questions coming in for all of you. So I know we should have time for some of those. But one thing that I want to talk about too is, okay, let's say we talked about, the supplier side, getting an idea for a trip, the marketing point of it, but now let's talk about the planning. And one of the things is just making sure travelers are a right fit. This is something I never really thought about until I talked to all of you. Joy, I want to start with you on this because when we had talked previously, you made a point, and of course too, when you have, escorted tours, definitely want to be able to travel with them. But there's also a lot of things that you just need to make sure this is going to work like as a group and that they're okay to be part of what's going on. So how do you do that? How do you decide, hey, you're the right fit, or maybe you deal with maybe this isn't right for you?
And that goes back to what Ted was saying about really knowing your customers, about taking the time to really talk to people. There are people for whom group travel just is not going to work. They are not good at showing up on time. They don't like being on a schedule. I've literally had customers tell me, but I don't like people. Well,
usually men who say that, right? Isn't it?
and then my response is then, well, this probably isn't a good idea for you. It's if you'll take the time to really visit with them, generally speaking, they'll tell you what you need to know. And I think it's really important if you're incorporating them into a group to take that time and be sure that they do have very realistic expectations about what's going to happen, and that there are going to be schedules and there are going to be perhaps some inclusions that wouldn't have been their choice if they had created the itinerary exactly to suit their own needs. So it's really important to speak to everyone about what exactly they're going to experience. And then you don't have anyone who's disappointed and grouchy, grumpy, going down the road. That's no fun for anyone involved. And you and I specifically spoke about people that are less than pleasant during the group. And I personally fire them. If they go on one of my group trips and are unpleasant to any of the other guests or to me or to our tour conductors or our drivers, they don't get to go anymore. It's a right and a privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege to go on a private group with other people. And you don't get to be demeaning about politics or religion, or there are just social standards that need to be met, and a sense of polite interaction with everyone else. And if they're not going to do that, they don't get to go.
I would add that I'm a big fan of cruises of kind of all stripes, because I think they just have a tremendous amount of built-in flexibility and built-in personal time and sort of that ability to choose your own adventure. And so, you might design a group where really all you do is have cocktails together each night before dinner. And that's really kind of the only group experience that happens. You might throw in a couple shore excursions. You might throw in something else, but you can craft it in a way that, to me personally, I don't know that I'd enjoy being on a bus with the same people for 10 days. That probably wouldn't be my style of travel. So when I design group trips, I try to, incorporate a lot of flexibility in it so people don't feel like they're stuck in a confined space with the same people forever.
And
That's
I've
a
done
good
both,
point.
and I totally agree. I happen to like being on a bus with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that's the point, isn't it? That we put the right person in the right product for the right experience.
Joy, you are my etiquette hero. So I loved
You
everything
did say
you
that very
shared.
well.
You did. And
Go ahead.
I was going to say something we haven't really touched on, though, is also corporate and incentive, which can also be incredibly lucrative. Sometimes corporate is looked at as a little bit more intimidating than a leisure group, but I'll tell you from experience, they're usually much easier than a leisure group. Leisure groups, it's personal money, right? And it's your personal trip, it's your personal experience. So you're going to have a lot more questions. And you're going to need probably a lot more hand-holding than corporate. They're really focused on dates, space, rates, and contract. And you can usually contract them faster than a leisure group. They usually don't require as much hand-holding as a leisure group. And, don't forget they're out there. And incentive groups is a little bit of both worlds, because if you think of insurance groups and the top sellers within a company, they're going to earn an incentive trip. So the corporation's paying for it. So you're dealing with the corporate mindset of purchasing this group, but you're getting to put together something fun.
That's an excellent point. And I think too, don't forget that, your local State Farm agency, your local building center, they may do incentive trips as well. And there may be some poor overworked person in their office who's been responsible for planning it, and you could save them from misery by coming in and say, hey, we'd love to do this, and here are some good ideas where we could put together a nice incentive trip for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, that's why I said this could be 5 hours, because there's so many ways that you can do all of this. And that's why I love the variety, because if you want, hanging out on the bus, see, Joy, I think I would really enjoy it too. Getting on the bus, I want to do this, and then also the river cruise. There's so many ways, incentive. And I know there was a question that came in, like, how do consultants get, how do you get started with corporate travel? But Ted, you said it, just go in there and ask and see, and you might be their saving grace, honestly.
Yeah, don't bid for Microsoft right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Find a small company. You probably know somebody, you probably work with somebody, you may have a friend or family member who works for a smaller, medium-sized company, and just start to ask the question. And in enough time, you'll get an answer that, yeah, we do that. We'd love some help.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So we have so many questions. So I just kind of want to ask one more general and let you all interpret it how you wanted and answer it how you want. But what would you say, what would be your advice? And I know it could be this could be a very long answer, but what would be advice that you would give someone planning it out in group travel? Like, what is the stuff that you think gets overlooked or overshadowed? Is it just in the details? What is it? What advice would you give basically? And I don't know which one wants to start. I'm going to let someone choose.
I can go first. I would say that it takes twice as much time. You need twice as much lead time as you need with individual travel. And so if, all of a sudden after this webinar, you're like, yep, I want to get started in that, target 2024. It's too late to really do 2023 with any decency, I would say. It will take a long time and plan accordingly.
The point I would make is don't lose sight of the fact that in our particular circumstance, and I hope that it's the same for a lot of the people that are watching this, it's been an opportunity to see the world. I mean, we've been doing this for 15 years and we go with them. And we've been all over the world. There's something about seeing something spectacular. You see it on your own and you're standing there and you think, boy, that's a beautiful sunset, or that's the Coliseum, or whatever it is. And it's very special to you. But when you're sharing it with people that have a like interest and whose company you enjoy, it becomes synergy. It's just exponentially more meaningful to you because you've shared it with people that you care about. And you can't just look at the fact that you're going to get a paycheck that's got multiple numbers in front of the comma. Also look at the personal growth and the personal experience you're going to have. I don't know that many other careers that enable you to see the world, unless you want to join the Navy, that you can do it in such an extremely lucrative way and a really fun way. It's a great group business is a blast. You just got to be able to handle it.
I'll speak to the unfun part, which is contracting. And actually that's fun for me. I love contracting, but remember, there's always going to be a contract. If you have a group, there's a contract. Contracts can be very intimidating. They can be 30, 40, 50 pages long, depending on the size of your group, the length of stay, the destination, all the concessions, details, and language you asked for. So really take some time and learn about contracting, learn about the language of contracting that you're going to see over and over in most group contracts. And if you're not familiar and you're not comfortable, reach out to somebody who's already done it and have them do it with you a few times, because you are committing to dollars for you and or your client. So just make sure that you understand what you're reading and that you can explain it to your client so they understand what they're accepting. It's just really, really important. So groups are great and they're fun, but they are a contract. You're going to feel like you're buying a house sometimes because they can be that detailed. So take a little time and learn it.
Perfect. I love that. There's just so much good stuff. And I have a lot of questions here, and I think this is a really good one to go into next, because this one could take it's kind of like the last one. It was a very big question. So this is from Lillian, and she said, newbie here, loving the panel. Awesome. I am interested in working with groups and actually hosting them, but what would be a normal workflow when building a group and booking for them? Because we actually didn't really go over that. Is like the actual workflow of we said, planning it and then marketing, but then what is the actual workflow look like? And Joy, I'll start with you on that one.
By workflow, we usually, we're contracting and putting together our groups for 2025. So Ted was absolutely right. You can't just jump in and say, oh, I think I'll do a Christmas cruise group in November of the year before. That's ludicrous. Plan ahead. We try to announce our groups at least 18 months in advance. And by the time I say announce them to our followers, we've done all the work Kathy alluded to as far as getting the contracts in place and working out the details. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work before you ever go public with the marketing of the group. And then you market your group and you begin to add members to your group. And by the time you're a year out, you want to be well on your way to having that group full. And then you will follow the contract depending on the company that you've gone with. I don't do a lot of individual contracts. I stick with one or two main companies, so I know their contracts and I know what my timelines are, when I have to have all my names submitted, when the final payments are. So it's pretty cut and dry as far as that goes, but I would absolutely start at least 2 years in advance and start looking at what have been your most successful destinations? Have you been selling a lot of Italy? Have you been selling a lot of Ireland? Is Great Britain a big source of income for you? Look at what your clients are interested in and think, could I do a group there that they might participate? We were doing really well with river cruises, and we took a very big chance right in the middle of COVID and did a full ship charter. And that's the first time we've ever done that. And we announced it on our Facebook pages and sent it out to our database. We filled the entire ship in 3 weeks. It's all about knowing what your customers want, kind of reading the tea leaves and seeing what's selling, seeing what's strong, seeing what they're grabbing for, and putting something in place that they want. And I've had some that were big old flops too. So don't take it too personally if you put something out there that no one's interested in. That's going to happen if you're going to pursue this line of income.
Yeah, I think, the booking process itself is not too different than booking an individual trip. You will collect the details, the information, you'll collect a deposit. At some point, you'll make a final payment. But the way in which it's done for groups can be very different. You might have space without having to necessarily assign a name to it. So if somebody were to walk away, perhaps there would be no penalty from the supplier at that point. So group contracts are really specific on all those types of things, and it's really important to understand them. It's also really important before you get too far down the path to understand how you're going to collect and disperse the funds for the groups. So are you going to collect them as an agency and then turn around and write, sort of a single check to the supplier for the company? Or are you going to pay, just take the client's credit card and put it into the supplier website, just like you would do with any other booking? And so there's a lot to think about. And if you collect the money yourself, well, then you have credit card processing fees and other things you have to pay. So you really have to have kind of a P&L statement put together for the trip to understand not just the costs of the actual travel, but some of the other pieces that might be associated with it.
Well, I have always leaned towards corporate and incentive more than leisure. And so right now I probably have 10 RFPs for the next 30 days for groups. Corporate and incentive don't always plan far in advance. They should, if they want to get a better deal and get what they want, but they don't always. And
no free parking for them.
Yeah,
right. And so, I have people that reach out for groups, within a week, 2 weeks, 30 days, 90 days. Don't be afraid of those either. If you have an RFP software system that you're using, you can really send RFPs out very quickly on behalf of someone. That can be quick commissions to you because it's happening so quickly. So don't be afraid of those either.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good point, because someone was asking, they're like, when you're talking about starting in 2024, 25, are you referring to like larger groups of like 100 plus people? Or what about if it's like 20 to 50? And that's actually a good question. Would you still, the further out you can be, obviously it's always the best, but what's kind of the idea?
Well,
I think we're talking, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, 4 people on 4 cabins on a river cruise, that's a big deal for a river cruise company. 4 cabins on a Royal Caribbean cruise is nothing. So it really depends on what type of trip you're planning. And it also depends on what's available. And, some companies close down to group space 2 years out. Others are, they'll take a group booking whenever one comes across the doorstep. So it just really depends on what you're doing and how big the group is relative to what you're trying to accomplish, what the supplier is trying to accomplish.
And I'll add to that as well. Suppliers don't usually just take group after group after group. They've predetermined what percentage of their inventory they will give to a group. It might be 50% of everything they have all the time. So if a hotel has 300 rooms, they're only going to commit 150 ever to a group. So just because you can go on the website and see availability does not necessarily mean it's available for a group. So just keep that in mind as well when you're planning, which is why the farther out the better, because you're going to get the pick of the litter of what you want, because they probably haven't reached their group capacity with that supplier.
And just like with destination weddings, there's a limit to the number that they're going to do on any given day. And once they're gone, they're gone. There's no more space on that particular day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually you answered it. I was going to ask this. So there's a question from Russell. He said, I started doing groups recently. Right out of the gate, I have a group who wants to do a group of 30 rooms. That's amazing. Congrats, Russell. However, Royal Caribbean on their webpage doesn't show available for 3 months out. So he had said, is that pretty standard that groups have to be sold 6 months minimum out? But it sounds like it's just depends on it.
Yeah, it's gonna depend on how full the
Mhm.
ship is.
Yeah. Um, Another question here. Okay, so there's a lot, so I'm trying to pick these that are
If I
getting
could
asked the
add
most.
something just
Yeah.
for a moment, our very first river cruise group, we did a Christmas cruise and they said, I forgot, we just started selling into it. And in all honesty, we thought if we could get 10 cabins, it was going to be the biggest win in the history of the state of Oklahoma. And I mean, we were so excited. And we got to 82 passengers and the cruise line cut us off because they didn't want more than half of the ship full of my guests. Well, then they couldn't fill those. So first they said, no, you can't sell anymore. You're done. We're going to fill the rest. And then they came back a couple of months later and said, you know what, if you think you can put some more people in here, go ahead.
Just kidding.
Been there, Ted? And so back to availability. If they're under, they would rather sell with my people than no people. So it's just a crapshoot every time. It's you think just when you think you've got it figured out, the rules change.
That's true. Very true. I know. And that's what I'm really excited for this webinar because hopefully this was a lot. I know this easily could have stirred up more questions for people than answers on some of this stuff because there's just so much to group travel. But this has been really cool just, going through, especially for anybody who's interested because it is really lucrative. It can be super cool and completely game changing for your business. So I just want to thank you so much again, Kathy, Ted, Joy. This has been incredible. But before I go, are there any parting thoughts? Like, hopefully we covered a lot of things, but is there anything that didn't get talked about that's very important? I mean, there's probably a lot, but
I'm just going to touch on education. So every
Mhm.
supplier out there has educational certifications. Usually people take the generic ones that are just a little bit about the supplier, but almost all of them have something about groups as well. If you think you're going to be using Royal Caribbean a lot or Virgin Cruises or anybody at all, look on their website, look in their agent website and see if they have a group's educational opportunity there, because that's really going to answer a lot of your questions. Also try to find somebody to be a mentor or to maybe work with you the first few times so it doesn't get as confusing or as intimidating, and help guide you through, because sometimes you might miss things. You don't know what you don't know in the beginning, right? So work with somebody who can help you not fall into some of those.
I would just add, I think you have to kind of keep trying. And I've had groups where, the only booking on the group was me. And I've had groups where I've done, cruise nights and people are literally throwing their credit cards at me to book things. And so, you will fail and you will succeed. And you just have to kind of keep plugging away and eventually you'll kind of find the formula that works out the best for you. And then stick with it and you can grow this into a really important part of your business.
Mhm. I love it. Oh, enjoy it. I'll let you go.
I was just going to say absolutely to both of those statements, and that if there's a particular type of group travel that you find that you really don't enjoy, just if you can afford not to do it, don't.
Mhm.
I don't do meeting and incentive travel. I do leisure travel because that's what I love. And you're going to always be the most successful when you're doing something you love. So follow your heart, follow it to its fullest and wildest dream, put everything you've got into it, and you'll find a way.
Love it. It's so insightful and helpful. There's so many people like, this is so helpful. That's why I was so excited to put together this webinar because group travel can be so cool. It's just really amazing. So thank you so much again, everyone. And this was recorded, so you can go back and pause and listen to everything again. But thank you so much again, panelists, for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules right now and joining us here today. But I just want to thank you again. And this was end of day one, which is crazy. And then tomorrow we will see you again at 12 p.m. Eastern, talking about building your brand. So it gives you the evening to think about what am I going to do, and then we'll help you think about how to build the brand tomorrow, which is really cool. So thank you so much again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.